What's up, everyone? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. So yet another one that came out on the 8th of October was the newest album from The Breathing Process, Labyrinthian. This comes out again on the 8th on Unique Leader Records. This band formed in 2003 in Connecticut and Massachusetts originally, and then did a lot of moving around. I think they were based out of LA for a while. And then they pretty much relocated to Pittsburgh, where they remain now. And this band is interesting just in terms of their sound. Now, this is their fourth full length, though their early material is very different from their current material. This band started off as more of a metalcore band with some, gothic synths here and there, and then has slowly over time morphed into more of a blackened death metal act / deathcore. It kind of walks that line, it might be too core for death metal heads, it might be not core enough for the deathcore fans.
I call it gothcore.
It definitely still has the core elements to it, but we had the pleasure of seeing these guys not too long ago here in Toledo, so that kind of prompted us actually checking them out again, because I was actually a fan of their earlier material.
Yeah.
Back when metalcore was a big thing, and this was an interesting shift, because when I saw them live, honestly, I didn't know it was them until they said their name. I was like, wait. This doesn't even sound like the old stuff.
Nope. Transitioned well live, though.
Yeah.
I thought they did all right.
They did a really solid job. So I saw this was coming out on Unique Leader, which I thought was a very interesting fit for this band. As in, it doesn't necessarily fit, but that is kind of refreshing, because Unique Leader is one of those labels where I kind of know what I'm getting when I get it, but this kind of steps outside of that. Now, starting this album off, you get the songs Terminal and Shadow Self, which honestly kind of hark back a little bit more towards the earlier sound. Still has deathcore and metalcore elements, but sprinkled in just a little bit of black metal on this. More breakdown driven, more kind of what you would expect from them.
A lot of synths, though, in this album, and heavy on them, too.
It kind of depends on how they're used. Now, unfortunately, they're here all the time, and I'll at least credit the fact that they have an actual keyboard player. This isn't a laptop off in the corner. I don't like it when bands do that instead of actually having a synth player. Just, get a guy.
Why cheat? You're telling me that you can't find a synth player?
They're out there.
Yeah.
It's drummers that generally aren't out there because they're drumming for every other band. But the cool thing is, when it does work, it really works, but it's in a totally different approach. The more death metal side of this band that you hear, especially in those first two tracks, big, nasty slam riffs, but you have this sort of gothic synth thing behind it, so symphonic slams.
And it takes away, I think, from some of the heft, because the first of all, the guitars are really beefy.
Yeah.
Really beefy, crunchy guitars, but with the gothic synth behind them or even over them, it just kind of Yeah, it kind of dulls the impact. I mean, especially since these are kind of slam riffs. So, I mean, those are all about impact. But when the keys are using the more blackened material, which I was kind of shocked in terms of the amount of more black metal centric stuff. In fact, it's almost the entire middle of the album. Really, everything after the first two songs, because I don't think the first two songs necessarily fit with the rest of the record, to be honest.
It seems like they were supposed to be a pace setter, but literally when Wilt and Savage Plea, the title track, and I Sleep, I Wake, which might be one of my favorite tracks on
I think
here.
I Sleep, I Wake is my favorite too. Yeah.
All of a sudden you get cold and grim. The death metal elements are still there, but they're dialed back, and this is where the synths actually work, because they start doing more layered tremolo melodies and harmonies, and then you have that synth pulse sort of behind it, and you get this cool wall of sound effect. And vocally, I think this is kind of where the strength is too, because the vocalist likes to do a lot of different growls, like sort of a mid-range growl, deep guttural growls, some not great pig squeals, but thankfully they're used very sparingly.
I think I heard 2 pig squeals out of this whole album.
And I think they were in the first 2 tracks.
Yep.
And then high, shrill, kind of Black Dahlia murder-ish, higher screams, and those are generally employed in the blackened moments. And honestly, that's where the sound really comes together. Everything kind of just changes. And tonally, this is kind of a strange album, just in terms of you have 2 very distinctly separate camps that generally don't get along. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of deathcore guys that think black metal is shit, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of black metal guys that think deathcore is shit. Yep. So, yeah, it probably unnerves them that they would agree on that just because they don't want to agree with each other ever. I'm not saying that's all of them, but that's definitely some of them. Songs like Labyrinthian and I Sleep, I Wake, especially Labyrinthian, I didn't think I'd be comparing any of this to like Dissection, but there's a lot of really catchy, kind of cold, gothic, grim melodies on there that are so far removed from the deathcore camp that it's flat out not deathcore.
Yep. And in Labyrinthian, too, there's actually a little bit of clean singing, which I didn't think I'd hear.
And it was really good. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of Enslaved. Like, when it came down to, like, the bigger melodies that are in there, like, because it gets kind of epic. But, I don't know, like, it really kind of caught me off guard. Like, literally the whole middle of this album kind of caught me off guard because, you know, I saw the description as blackened death metal / deathcore. It's like, okay, that's like maybe like Carnifex. They like to use keys and atmosphere, but it's still deathcore, just brutal deathcore. They love that shit. This definitely aspires to be way more on the melodic side.
Like in I Sleep, I Wake, which is I think the longest track on here. It's like 7 minutes, 7 minutes and 5 seconds, which isn't a typical thing for this genre at all.
Now, long deathcore songs, I mean, you know, the 5.5 minute ones are generally the longer ones. I'm not saying they don't exist, but the whole back half of I Sleep, I Wake is just gorgeous, layered tremolo riffs. And honestly, probably one of the most distinct, catchy melodies on here.
Yep. And like he said with the tremolo riffs, I was happy that that's what they used for atmosphere in the back half of that song versus the keyboards. Like they put the keyboards to sleep for a minute and played their instruments.
Well, they were quietly snoring in the background. You could hear them still, but at that point they kind of contribute to building just a bigger melody in general. Like you get this lush harmony, and it's not just a thing like where they isolate stuff. Because there's a couple of sections in here where they'll isolate a drum beat and then they have the keys play and do like a sort of a muffled static vocal thing, which kind of a deathcore intro thing that happens a lot. But that's where you just hear the keys just a bit too much. When they blend them in, and again, mostly with the black metal material, it works pretty well. Now, I actually picked up the album before this, their self-released album, Samsara, and this is definitely different than that. Now, that one definitely employed more black metal elements, but that one kind of felt like more of a testing market. All right, let's see if this can work. It stayed more firmly planted in the deathcore sound, like it was definitely more groove-laden, more built around the breakdowns and big, chuggy death metal riffs. Again, those things still are on here, but the black metal aspects really stand out. That one felt like more of a test and, you know, I would say pretty successful. This one, they just went full tilt for it, and I kind of commend them for it because, honestly, I think they found like a stronger sound in this sort of mishmash of styles. I'd say a good chunk of the black metal elements are very comparable to stuff like Dimmaborger, maybe Cradle of Filth, albeit better vocals.
Yes.
And early Abigail Williams, which honestly I hadn't gone back and listened to their earlier albums just because I like the more current stuff even more from Abigail Williams. But it has that sort of sound, that symphonic black metal sort of sound. And honestly, it works on most of this. Some of it, though, it kind of wears a little bit thin.
I guess one of the issues I had with this, other than the synths, if you guys watch a lot of videos, I'm not real big on synths, especially the more like gothic-y choir-laden synths, kind of like what's in this album for the most part. The song We the Drowned, a lot of big melodies in this, but the synth work, I think, in here makes it sound kind of hokey.
They isolate some of the synths.
It's like really dreamy, and it just kind of drags a little bit, too.
It feels like a longer song than I Sleep, I Wake, which is a longer song.
Yep.
It just kind of plateaus really early.
Maybe, in my opinion, put this song closer to the beginning of the record where it sounds kind of different. And maybe not let it go out on this. Because it's not really a banger of a track to go out on.
Yeah, and then the weird shift to more industrial samples on Atlas. I mean, you kind of had like a theme with the gothic sort of, you know, keyboards. And this one kind of feels like you borrowed a little bit from Skinny Puppy. You know, I don't know. Like I sense this is definitely like a big transitional album. They wanted to try some different things. They definitely tried some different things on here from what I was familiar with.
And kudos for trying that, of course.
I mean, you know, experimentation is Well, it's something that needs to happen, but, it's that whole success, like whether or not, it's good. Because just because something's different doesn't necessarily mean it's good. But honestly, for me, I think a good chunk of this was pretty damn good. And honestly, it's weird that the death metal elements were the things that I didn't care for as much. It was actually the black metal elements, because I really think they succeeded there, especially on the melodic side. Like, they really crafted some catchy melodies. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. This was pretty good. I think they need to just fully embrace the black metal side. The slam riffs with the keys, ditch them. Like, that just doesn't work. It's a slam riff, and I think the keys just kind of make it a little too Beetlejuicy.
Well, right. And plus, if you're experimenting, that's good. You wanna pepper in new things, but don't totally abandon, where you came from.
Just let a slam break be a slam break, and then use those awesome keys to layer in those awesome tremolo riffs, because those, I think, are the strengths of the album. The black metal elements that they brought in, they did a really good job, and they remind me of some really classic acts there. Occasionally, reminded me of Cradle of Filth, but, that band has fans. I'm not one of them, but probably going to review the new album. But I do like this, and I recommend you guys check it out. It's an interesting album. If you're familiar with the band's earlier work, this is very different from that, but it's still brutal when it needs to be, and different in a good way. I think the fact that they broadened their sound allowed them to pursue some different avenues and find some different sounds and craft a pretty good album.
I'm going to give it a 3. Like I said, I'm not necessarily a giant fan of synth work. I think that's something that I like less in black metal. And that's just a personal taste for me. I like a lot more atmosphere, and I like when it's created with guitars, and I don't like the gothy sound for synths. I think it takes away, actually, from, at least in my opinion, I think it takes away from some of the heft of this record. And again, while I think experimentation is great and it's good to dabble in other areas of music, I think they went a little too hefty on some of that experimentation, and I think they killed some of their, the sound that made them the Breathing Process. Again, that's my opinion. I'm not saying don't go out and jam it. I do like this record. There were some really killer parts, a bunch of sour lemon faces in the breakdowns that did cut through. But, for me, just average, run-of-the-mill, but good.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you would like to help us out there will be a link below, as well as a link to our giveaway for 7,500 subscribers. We're going to give away a stack of 8 CDs with the new Cannibal Corpse in there, and we are about 75 away from it. So if you have not got in on that, click that link, make a comment. That's all it takes, and you are entered. And thank you. Thank you to everyone that entered. Thank you to everyone that subscribed. Thank you to all the commenters, even some of the people that got upset with some of the reviews. We've got a couple, but, hey, I'm willing to talk to most of you and, troll you if you get trolly with me. Comes with the territory. It's part of it. Also, we have shirts available. If you would like one, and we actually have the size, which we are pretty much around just the extra large, 2X large, and maybe a small. I say that a lot, and I'm reasonably sure that's what's in the box. But if we have that size, hit us up on thrallsofmetal@gmail.com. Send us an email and put shirts in the title, and we will get back to you and hopefully sell you a shirt. So with that, thank you all for watching once again, and we will catch you later.